All right, welcome to this episode of College Talk Tuesday. My name is Andy Lockwood from Lockwood College Prep. Special edition today. We have a husband and wife team, friends of mine, and co-authors of the upcoming Student Success Secrets book to be released in a matter of days on Amazon. Michelle and Roz Slaughter, even though the caption only says Roz. We shouldn't read into that, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, good. So, all right, guys. So, thanks for joining us. I'm very much looking forward to this. So, before we start talking about the book a little bit, tell me a little bit about. Roz, you and I have known each other for 8-10 years or something, and I've known you as a gym owner, a trainer, a coach of other trainers. Serial entrepreneur, real estate investor. Michelle, I know you're an accountant, which sounds almost as exciting, but I'm sure I don't know everything. So
it's thrilling.
why don't you guys just give a little bit of brief background before we get into the book?
Sure, you can go first. Well, we basically decided that we were going to do this project together because, even though I have a background in accounting, I've always enjoyed writing. It's something that I've always done sort of on the side. And we felt like this was a really good passion project for us. And we felt that with Roz's speaking career and all of his coaching combined with my writing, we would sort of join forces and, work on something like this together. So that's how it started.
And so Roz, tell us a little bit about your background and why Sure. why you wanted to write the book.
Yeah. Well, my background, is in fitness. But before I got to that, I was born with my right leg shorter than the other, no hamstring or quadricep on my right leg. So I was born with a disability, which initially kind of set me back in my mindset. So I've always had this understanding that I wasn't like everyone else. I was a little bit different, which led me into being a personal trainer so that I can inspire other people who had limitations on them that they didn't put on themselves, whether they're a disability or something like that. And I've always been inspirational and motivational towards my clients. And looking back on my life, I looked in, I said, I had some challenges with academics within school, having a tough upbringing. And I see that there are a lot of kids that are going through challenging times in their lives right now. And I know that I put in over 25 years of personal growth, whether it's with coaches, mentors, books, seminars, audios. So I've invested a lot in my personal growth, and I've learned how to overcome challenges and turn those challenges into opportunities for success. And I wanted to share this book with kids just like that, who may have some self-esteem issues, may have confidence challenges, may even be holding themselves back or something that they don't even have control over, like ADD or, bipolar or any of those, depressed. And especially now that we're going through this pandemic, I found that a lot of teens are struggling. And this was a great opportunity for me. I had some time to sit down with Michelle and just really just pour my heart out and think about, Roz at 12, what challenges did I have? And what did I need? What tools and strategies would have helped me overcome some of the limitations and the roadblocks that I smashed right into? And this is the book that came out of that. And I didn't have the same kind of challenges with respect to, having a disability or anything like that. But I had my own challenges, in my own right, with self-esteem and not being sure of what path I should be taking, not having a lot of people that I could speak to as a youth about, what I should be doing, where I should be going. So I think that combined with everything that Roz just pointed out made it a good, combination.
Interesting. All right. So if you're just joining us and you have questions, we're talking to the authors of Student Success Secrets, Michelle and Roz Slaughter. What's it like writing a book with your wife? I'm partners with Pearl in our business, but I've never actually written a book with her. So I'm curious about that.
I got to say, Andy, it was a great opportunity and a great experience. And I'm not just saying that. For me, I've had this message inside of me for years, and we've talked about it. And I said, when I have time, I'm going to do this. When I have time, someday I'm going to do this. And we sat down and, and I was like, you know what? She loves to write. It was one of her goals, is to be a published author. And, I've written 2 other books in different space. And I was like, this is a great opportunity to collaborate. We can pull each other's best qualities out and really share, our unique experiences of going through teenhood into adulthood. And so it was a great opportunity. And I think we went through some interesting challenges when it came to editing and cutting back the material and things like that. But and that's just for being an artist. But I think it was great.
Yes, that's my real question. What's it like writing a book with your husband, especially when he's like super high energy, perhaps a little ADD, bright, shiny object? Some might say, I think if he was very focused, but I also think if he was entertaining a lot of other ideas at the same time.
Yes, that is very true. And he likes to talk. So sometimes I'm like, can we just stop right now so I can get to my computer and actually write something?
All right. So maybe we'll talk more about that offline. So, all right. So let's talk a little bit about the book. I was going to ask, I think it's pretty obvious, and you already answered, sort of the challenges that kids are facing today with the pandemic and all that. But you guys have your own children. I have children. They were around before the pandemic, and now they're going through it. So what would you say, either with or without regard to coronavirus, like what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that kids are having today that, may be preventing them from achieving everything they're capable of achieving?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is that their self-imposed limiting beliefs are really critical to their success. And a lot of kids, and I can tell you my own son who's 17, he struggles with confidence. He struggles with not living up to the standards of, social media, and saying, I'm not as tall, I'm not as athletic as these kids. And that really holds a lot of them back. And they start to have this, I'm not enough syndrome. And I see it so often because, these kids are coming into sports, academic, anything. College is so stressful. I know my son now, he's looking at different schools, and every day he's coming home and saying another kid got a letter, or another kid got a scholarship, or this kid signed. And the minute he senses that, I look at his body language and I can tell his shoulders slump in. He feels a little defeated because he hasn't gotten that yet. He's not there. And he has me at home. So right away, I'm shifting the state. And I'm like, you know what, Nikki, this is what you got to be focused on. It's all about you. You can't be worried about what's on someone else's scoreboard. But a lot of kids don't have that. So you talk about depression, anxiety, bullying, social media, FOMO, fear of missing out. These kids have been home for a year, a lot of schools that didn't get to go to school, and they're really missing that social connection. And that's something that I think is going to be really a challenge over the next few years for these teens who are even going into college and didn't have that year and a half of interaction with their friends and their peers.
How much do you think parents, can influence kids that way versus their peers?
You want it?
Well, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword. As parents, we always want the best for our children, but in this day and age, I don't think a lot of parents are equipped to deal with the emotional struggles and the societal struggles that kids face. I'm not that old, but I remember that back when I was applying to colleges, my parents knew nothing about what I was doing. I got all my college applications. I did all my essays. I just asked them for checks for me to, to send the applications off. And these days, parents are so involved, and that's a good thing. And it's also a bad thing because I think, there's a lot of pressure put on kids to succeed in the way that their parents want them to succeed. But then some parents themselves don't have the skills required to help their kids really succeed or to find success.
I'm finding that, Andy, that a lot of parents don't have they didn't understand the social emotional learning that needs to go through for these kids to handle what's happening right now. I'm in a part of a lot of different groups with mothers of teens, and they're struggling with, too much technology, discipline. Should they have it? Should they not have it? And one of the things that some of the clients that I've had the opportunity to coach come to me and they automatically ask me, Russ, how do I deal with this when this happens? And my number one thing is that I tell a lot of my clients is, hey, First, you have to be the parent, not the friend always. It's really important to have that boundary so that, because kids need to have that structure. And then when these things come up, you got to head them off, proactively. When it comes to bullying, you got to make sure you're helping them out. When it comes to school, when it comes to failure, like my son came home and he didn't get the dress for a varsity basketball game. And his coach called him at 8:00 in the morning and texted him that you're not dressing tonight. Immediately, what did I do? I had a call, but I stopped that and I said, you know what, let me go talk to Nikki, because I felt that it was important that I install some strength in that moment so that it didn't anchor in and he didn't feel this sense of negative belief about himself the entire day as he was going through school. Now, when you're asking, I know a lot of parents don't have this, like, I'm going to be the motivator and be there for them, but all they have to do is let them know, hey, I've been there. I've walked this path. It'll be okay. And this will pass too.
I think your point about, Michelle, about having done things a lot differently, when you were growing up, that's something I actually struggle with also, because, I know I wrote a college essay. I don't remember. I must have handwritten it. I applied literally to one college, ironically enough, because I liked the basketball coach, and I look at kids today and parents, not just, ones we work with, but also ones in my own family. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I hear about, anxiety or things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, Jesus, just suck it up. I mean, what is your problem? I've said to my own son, which, Pearl immediately corrected me. Not the best thing, but I said to him, I was like, look, you're 18. If this were 1944, you'd be in a trench somewhere in Germany or somewhere in Europe. That's how you'd be dealing with your depression then. So, can you please, man up? Right. Would you say that's not the right approach?
Well, I mean, no, but it isn't, because I think that, too many parents want to protect their children, and, kids grow up and work for bullies. They grow up and they go into environments where, if they don't meet a deadline, they're fired. So there's only so much babying we can really do for a child in order to help that child find success. There has to come a point where, like you said, you need to be a little tough with them.
A little tough love once in a while is important.
But where do you draw the line, though, right? I mean, that's or what? How do you balance it? Because I think a lot of parents are like this too. One parent's more of a hard ass than the other one, but that doesn't mean that one's right and one's wrong, unless you're married to my wife. But so how do you balance that? I mean, I don't even know how I would even answer that myself.
From my experience working with thousands of clients who all have kids, and I've been coaching for over 20 years, one of the things I would say is that every child is different. And you know that because you have your own basketball team.
We have 4. Yeah.
But every kid is different. Some kids can take a little bit more tough love. Some can't. And I had to learn and adjust my own style, because I grew up with a grandma who was from the South. A straight disciplinarian. She said things once, and that one time meant do it now. But not all kids are going to be able to respond the same way to your message. And when I'm working with a client, I just say, you know what, let's look at each child individually and find out what's going to be the best way for us to communicate and get the outcome we want. We all want the same outcome: successful kids. We want them to be disciplined. We want them to be proactive. We want them not to procrastinate. And the way we do that as parents is we have to look at different ways to combat those challenges with different children.
Sometimes I think that kind of gets lost in terms of what parents want, because I think if you ask them, what do you want, for your kids, they might give an answer like that. But I think so many of us are just so caught up in this myopic, like day-to-day stuff, that it's really more about, did you take the SAT 18 times? Did you get into an Ivy League or a competitive school? And those to me are, they might be important, but they're so lower level, so far down compared to the higher level stuff that you mentioned. And I always find, and I have this conversation with our SAT tutor, Marissa, also, when kids don't perform well on game day in a test, or they don't achieve something, but they've been practicing really well, it usually means that they're stressed out, and that stress flows downhill, from typically mom or dad. So how do you find yourselves either, you know, in your own experience or with other parents that, you know, trying to remind parents what's important, and how do you do that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that it comes down to just saying, you know, what's important, and then, you know, what's not important. Like for me, I knew that school was important, but I didn't have any mentors or anything like that to give me the direction I needed to go. And a lot of times parents are focused so much on the grades, they forget that the learning is where the lessons are really at. And if you forget those lessons of life, that the things that we're getting to teach our kids every day about going through a pandemic and how to actually cope with disappointment. I did a video recently, and it's gotten a lot of rave because kids don't know how to deal with disappointment. They don't know when they don't get they don't get the grades they want. They don't get into college they want. They break down. I was watching the movie that you were a part of, and on Netflix, and you know, the kid, she's crying, she didn't get into school, and I'm like, okay, but you got into other schools. And what is the point of college? The point of college is so that you can prepare yourself for the next stage of your life. It's not just to get into college to wear that cool shirt. And I think that that's what we have to have. It all comes down to communication. In chapter 5 in our book it's not just for the teens, it's specifically for the parents as well. How are we communicating with our kids and communicating what's important and how they have to get to that next level in their lives?
You know, a good example of that really is with my older son, Richard, who's going to be 21 this month. He had applied to a few colleges when he was in high school, and he decided that he really wanted to go to the Coast Guard Academy. It was the one school he applied to that he got rejected from. And he was so devastated. And at the time, you know, we talked about it, and I said, you know, Richie, what is your goal? Do you want to be in the Coast Guard? And he said, yeah. I said, well, what else can you do to get into the Coast Guard? You can enlist. So he ended up enlisting in the Coast Guard. And, you know, at 20 years old, he has a great profession. He already owns his own condominium. He's, and he did everything by himself. He bought his own car. He he's going to school now, and he's looking already into where he's going to go for his 4-year degree. So, I mean, in the end, failure can lead to success. But I think we get so caught up as parents, especially, like, you need to go through this path to succeed. And, you know, writing your child's college essay is not going to enable that child to be able to write an essay when they're in college, or a thesis paper or something like that. So, you know, maybe you have to let them fail so that they can find another way around that.
Yeah, and that's I think a lot of parents, including present company included, have a hard time with that. But I think it's the greatest thing that you can let your kids do is to, you know, achieve something or screw up, you know, on your own. And that was actually, I think, the thing that I found most striking about the whole college admissions scandal was that these kids, you know, no matter what, felt like crap about themselves.
Right.
Because the message to them from these parents was like, look, you need help. You need illegal help. You're not good enough to do something on your own. Right. And when you look at, well, you know, my goal, if the goal is to get into a certain college, or my goal is to get into the Coast Guard Academy, you know, my response would always be, well, why is that important to you? And then, you know, maybe it takes a few questions, but if, like, you know, with Richie, if the goal is, well, I want to, you know, be in the Coast Guard, and I want to be able to be successful and, you know, buy a home and, you know, have nice things and all that. Well, he's doing that. So that's the real goal. It's not necessarily the one path that didn't work out for him.
And we talk about that in the book. I mean, the point of the book really is to empower young people at a young age to not necessarily, you know, stand up against their parents or against their teachers or anything like that. That's not what we're advocating. But we're basically saying, you know, find out who you are so that you can voice what it is that you want in your own life in order to be successful. Like, you know, at 16, 17 years old, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Right. And I kind of just listened to everybody else around me that was like, you should do this and you should do that. And you know, I would do things that I didn't necessarily want to do because I should do them. Whereas I think what this book does, we dive into a chapter of who am I? And we go into, really diving deep into what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the things that interest you? What are the things that, we also talk about envisioning your life. Like, how do you see your life 10 years, 20 years from now? Like, do you picture yourself walking down the street with a briefcase or,
or being
like,
an accountant?
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, how is it that you envision how you see your life? And we have a lot of exercises that takes children through it, and it's meant to be done actually also with the parents if that's what the child wants to do. But it's better if it's done with the parent, because then they can really, dive deep into it together.
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of kids just don't read also, right?
Yeah.
And I like that you didn't write War and Peace here. I mean, you wrote a very easily consumable book that must have been very hard to edit and trim down, like you alluded to earlier. But that actually brings up another question that I get asked a lot, and I have my own answer, but I'm curious about how you would answer this, Roz, the motivator, Slaughter, if I may. How do you motivate a kid?
That's a great question, Andy. I think the first thing is, and you've already alluded to, it's their why. You really have to know what is it that they want, and then you're going there. You have to be a guide. You're not trying to be their coach always. And that's tough. I ask a lot of questions. And one of the things that motivation is something that you have to develop within the kid. And it's getting some motivation. Like, how are you going to get that momentum? And it's counting those small wins. See, so often we're looking at the big win and we're only looking at, the big goal. But what are the small little micro wins that you're going to get on the way to that? For example, I love the fact that I always take a big goal. You want to start? Okay, you want to improve on the basketball court using Nikki, right? What are the fundamentals you need to do every day to get better? And I believe it's habits. You have to develop habits of success. And once you start to develop some of those habits of success, the momentum comes. Anything you wanted to do or achieve had to start with taking that first step. So when I'm instilling motivation into any team, it's how do I get them to take action immediately, not someday? Because someday will just lead to a day where it's a gloomy day or I never got to do. And that is so critical with teens, adults, or anything. I've done that for 20 years with my fitness clients. It's like, okay, I'm going to start that diet on Monday. Well, how about it's Friday right now? What's one thing we can do today to move you closer toward what you say you want rather than waiting 3 more days to get started?
Yeah, I like that answer better than the one that I usually give, which is sort of along the lines of, I can't motivate your kid. It's got to come, from them. But what you're describing is a little bit more active. It's more like you're helping them pull it out of them. And I really like the idea of I guess keeping the scoreboard, of posting your wins. One of the things you and I have discussed this many times in the past. I was in this coaching program with this guy, Dan Sullivan. And one of the things that he instilled in us, which I've since dropped for several years, is, full disclosure, is at the end of each day, you write down 3 wins that you had. And they can be silly. They can seem silly. It could be like, well, I was nice to my kid. Or I took the dog for a walk, or it could be I shot 100 foul shots, the way my coach recommended that I do, and those build momentum. Absolutely. And they're very easy to lose track of too. But like you said, because I'm like this. I'm sure you guys are to some extent. I think it's very human to always be thinking about like what's next. Like once you hit a certain goal or do something, you could either celebrate it or you could be like me and be like, okay, well now what? And you need to do both, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So if you're just joining us, we're talking to, for a few more minutes here, the authors of Student Success Secret, the Slaughters from Florida. They abandoned New York State and moved down to Florida. It's looking like a good move right now. All the taxes.
Yeah, right.
Let me ask you this about the book. When you were writing this and you're coming up, I guess, with ultimately 7 tips or 7 secrets, were there any that surprised you that you kind of thought of differently, and then when you were collaborating, you finally arrived at one? Were there any that kind of surprised you? Even it could be the actual secret or the way that you were describing it.
I definitely think I would probably say communication. It's one that I didn't think about as much as and how important it is to just overall success in life, not just in school or sport. It's how do we communicate with the people in our environment, our coaches, our teachers, our parents, our siblings. And today we're not communicating. What's happening is that a lot of us tend to send or communicating via text, or communicating just by the internet, email. And if I want to get Andy on the phone, I have to call 4 people. So
or text me.
or text you, right? Yeah. If I call him, I'm never going to get him. But I think that was one that really shocked me when we sat down and we had to cut a couple out. Communication and how we're communicating. A lot of kids today don't communicate. So like you ask them, how was your day? Yeah. It was good. Right? Like that's the answer. 1 or 2, where like I would come home and my grandma would ask me and she wanted to know in detail, how was class? What did you do? What are some of the things you learned? What are the lessons? Because she wanted to get me speaking so that she could be brought up to speed on what was going on in my day-to-day. And we've incorporated that at dinner, where we do a no phone policy at the table, because we want to be able to communicate. And sometimes it's like pulling teeth with them. But at the same time, we realize that once you ask 1 question, 2 questions, the floodgates open. And you have to remember that we as parents should want to open up those gates so that we can get them speaking, because that's going to allow them to speak better, or more, definitely more, be able to articulate themselves outside of your home with other people.
How does that carry over to, kids spending more time communicating with their peers online versus face-to-face? I know you mentioned before the danger of social media. Mm-hmm. Do you have any tips on well, A, is that a bad thing? And B, because it's different. I mean, I know it's different than how we grew up, but is it bad? And B, if it is bad, like how do you help address that?
We discuss that too in the book. We talk about how you really have to be mindful of the form of communication that you choose to take, and that everything that you put out there in social media can potentially be scrutinized by coaches, college admissions counselors, even courts of law. I mean, you could get in trouble for some of the things that you put out there. So, we do discuss that, how there are certain forms of communication that you should choose to do verbally versus hiding behind a text. And we give you tips on how to empower yourself to sort of do those things. Like maybe it's as simple as advocating for yourself with a teacher or a coach rather than having your parents do it for you. Using your parents as sort of a last result, the last option possible. Like before you call that teacher about an unfair grade, maybe have your kid go up to that teacher and, make the argument themselves. Because once you do, it's like exercising a muscle. Once you do it a little bit and then a little bit and then a little bit, you get better at it. So
listen, a lot of you probably would not be surprised, and we have talked about this intimately before, at least Roz, you and I have. So many parents are doing all the emailing and all the communications with admissions officers and coaches, and their kids don't even know what's going on.
Right.
And then that can extend to writing their essays for them and all those types of things. And I understand how tempting that is to do that, because you want to do what you feel is right for your kids, but it actually hurts them. And it's
I had a friend who's an assistant district attorney in Manhattan who interviewed someone who graduated from law school, and their parents called her to see if their son got the job. Yeah. And he's 24 years old. I mean, when does it ever end?
Yeah, I've heard so many stories like that. I've had actually a guy who owns a business in your old neighborhood in the Oyster Bay area, who had someone interview with him who brought his parents to the interview. She didn't wait outside in the car. She actually came to the interview. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, those stories are crazy, but they're true. That's the thing. And it's you're not helping your kids, but you have to kind of back up and think, is this really, I know this is like what's in front of me right now, in front of my nose, but is this really going to be the best, long-term, way to help them grow up and be successful? Yeah. All right. So, anything else I should be asking about the book, and how do people get it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the book's coming out April 20th. We'll be releasing a week from today, and you'll be able to get it on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, as well as Apple. So it'll be in iBooks. But if you want to connect with myself or Michelle, I would normally say Facebook is the greatest place for me. But as of this morning, I was hacked and I don't have a Facebook account at the current time. So my best place would be roslaughter.com. You'll also be able to purchase the book there. Highly recommend. We also created an accompany planner that's designed to teach all 7 of the secrets and implementation. So how to take the secrets from the book, turn it into action, so that a 90-day process the kids can go through and not only learn exactly what are the 7 secrets, but how to implement them and install them in their lives so that they can create success instantly within 90 days.
Maybe you're deplatformed without even knowing it. You were canceled.
You know what? It like 5 minutes before we went live, I'm trying to fix it, and it's a problem. So I have to get over that.
I'll try to call Zuck, see what I can do.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. I could use a little aggressive help.
Call Mark for us.
Yeah. Zuck to his friends. Yeah. All right. Well, so I guess my final question. So I posted roslaughter.com. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, what if a kid's like, this is, I can imagine parents watching this and thinking, oh, that'd be a great idea. I'm gonna talk to my kid about this. How do they talk to their kid about this? How do they talk to their kid about opening the book? Participating in some of the exercises? Like what's the best way to quote unquote sell a potentially reluctant teen?
Well, I think it depends on, again, knowing your kid. Like is your kid the kind of kid that is going to pick up the book and read it themselves, or is it something that you might want to sit down with them? And it's a very quick book. It's not, a novel like you said. I mean, you could theoretically sit down in one sitting even and go through the entire book. But I'd say, just maybe sit down with your child for half an hour at a time and go through it with them. Maybe give them the workbook on the side and say, go back and do chapter 1, and then we can talk about some of the answers. If they're not the kind of child that's self-motivated. If they're self-motivated, I mean, it's easy. You just hand them the book and say, have at it.
Yeah. Well, then that'd beg the question: do they even need something like this? I mean, I would say yes, because LeBron James has a coach, and all these great athletes have coaches. Is that what you would respond also? And then, by the way, got a question from our client Claire, who wants to know if you do personal coaching one-on-one for kids, which I don't even know the answer to. I know we talked about that in the past.
Claire, yes, I do. And to answer your question, the motivation factor, which what I think you should do is, and I'm a proponent of, is leading from the front. As a parent, you want to lead from the front. I would never hand a book to my kid that I haven't had the opportunity to read the material and know the content to, because that's like someone telling you to do something they're not willing to do. And that's really one of the key things that, I mean, any of the clients that I'm working with currently, who a couple people have the book in advance, they read the book and they're going chapter by chapter, picking which chapters pertain specifically to their kids. Like one of my clients, her son is really struggling with discipline. So she's on chapter 6 of that, which is the 6th secret. And she's really developing, this is why I want you to read it. Here's a story. And we know that stories sell, right? Facts tell. So you got to find a way that you're going to connect the book to the kid. You can't just say, oh, you know what? Here's War and Peace, or here's this book. They're going to be like, I don't want to read that. One of my favorite books is Relentless by Tim Grover. He's a basketball coach for Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, all these. I got that book. I read it and I handed it to Nikki, and my son, who loves basketball. Where is that book right now? It's on the shelf. He did not read it because he didn't get the self-selected. But Then what I did is I went back, pulled something out of it, mentioned it to him, gave him the book back and said, you should read this. Remember when I told you that you were struggling here? Here's the point. He wanted to overcome a challenge. There's the solution. I gave him the solution. Now he went back and read the book because he knew that the solution was in there. And I motivated him through kind of finding that one thing that interests him.
And for, for kids that are self-motivated, I was that kid. Like I was the kid that read a ton of books, studied all the time. Like I said, I did all my college applications by myself. I ended up going to a very good school. I went to NYU. So I was self-motivated, but I did lack the skills needed for, like, I could have been more successful if I had, if I had known and used the principles in this book when I was 16, 17 years old. I don't think I lived up to my potential. And that's like the book is good for those kids who are already, on this very motivated path. They know exactly what they want, but they just don't have all the necessary skills to get there. And who does when you're 16 years old? Like who has all those skills? Nobody does. And it's also for the kid that needs that nudge, like a good example, just real quick. My older son was very conscientious. So he was the kind of kid where if I said, if he was complaining he didn't want to do his homework, I'd say, don't do your homework. That's fine. Don't do it. And then he'd get 1-0 and cry about it. And then that would motivate him to do his homework. Whereas my younger son, he's like super smart, very smart, but doesn't care about homework. So if I said, don't do your homework, he'd be like, okay. And he wouldn't care if he got all 0s and ended up with a C in the class. So what motivated him was that in 8th grade, he was put into like a mid-level course. And he was like, I'm so bored. I want to be an AP. But they wouldn't put him in the AP course because they said he lacked the discipline because, he scored phenomenal on exams, but he just never handed in homework. So that actually gave him the motivation to start doing it so that he could be in this higher level course because he was so bored in the the lower level course. So you have to know your kid.
Yep.
All right. Great. All right. Well, this was great. Everyone should check out the book, Student Success Secrets by Michelle and Roz Slaughter. It's on Amazon and other places, assuming you don't get deplatformed, right? Not on Facebook necessarily, but Apple. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Any parting bits of, nice. Student Success Secrets by the Slaughters. Unlock the 7 secrets. All right. Very good. All right. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Slaughters and everyone. Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.